In this tutorial video, I will explain how to add water to a map. And it's important to remember that water consists of two components. First of all, there's the visual component, and then there's the physics component. And in the case of water, it's better to add these separately. So let's first get started and add the physics component. So click New to add a new game object, and then use the Select tool to select that game object, and then add a polygon. As you can see, it's just an empty polygon that's been added. Let's increase the size a little bit. So we want a body of water with a large enough size that we can actually test it. So this is going to be the rough shape of our water, and this is going to be the part that the player interacts with. And it should not have any graphics associated with it. So go to the graphics panel and select None. It's going to be invisible in the game, but it's going to be the layer that is going to take care of the physical interactions, such as slowing down bullets, detecting when to create a splash when the player enters the water, or when bullets enter the water, etc. So then make sure that this is a solid object, but that it's also a sensor. So you should be able to move right through it, but you still want to detect when the player actually enters it. So it's important that it's solid, but that it's also a sensor. And the sensor kind of will make it behave like it's open, but it will still detect interactions. So once we've done that, then we go to the attribute panel and we select the fluid attribute. And as you can see, we have now given it the fluid attribute. And now the game knows that, hey, this is supposed to behave like a fluid. And here we can select some parameters for it. Let's just increase the density a little bit. And the waves is more like a legacy thing that shouldn't really be used anymore. It also applies to visual aspect, but it's not really important anymore. So we have now fluid with a certain density, and we can already test this. It's completely invisible, but just to show the general idea, I will add a new game object, and then I'll add a player spawn to it, so we can test our map. And let's go test it. Deathmatch. Okay. So as you can see, it's completely invisible, but when we spawn, we drop right into the water. And as you can see, there are some bubbles being rendered. And if we shoot down, you can see that this body of water is actually there. It just has only really a physics aspect and or a physics component, and it will interact with game objects, but it doesn't really look like water yet. It just behaves like water. So let's go back and now actually add our visual layer. So first of all, what we want to do is make this we're going to add the visual layer on top of this physics layer, and we don't want this physics layer to be in our way. So we select it, and then we press Alt button, and then we press the L key while holding the Alt button. And this will lock the layer, so it is no longer selectable. It will not bother us. It's still visible, but it's now locked away in the background. If we want to edit it again, we hold the Shift key, press L again, and there it is. And we can select it again, but that's not what we want right now. So Alt key, L, and the layer will be locked in the background. And now we're going to add a visual layer on top of this. So select the triangulation tool in the tools panel, and then click roughly where the physics layer is, and then add the body of water on top. And then just make sure that you add plenty of vertices. And this is especially important if you want the water to look nicer, and if you want to add some nice colors to it. So now we're done adding the vertices. We click, and as you can see, it has triangulated a new mesh. And as you can see also, because it always creates a convex shape, it added some thin triangles on top to fill in the gap. We don't really want that, so we zoom in by pressing the V key, and we can zoom in by pressing the C key. Let's zoom in, pressing the V key, and then select the delete tool, and then let's just delete those triangles that we don't want. So this one we also don't want. Okay, done. And then we go back to the selection tool, and then we select the whole mesh, or rather the whole bunch of triangles, and then we combine it into a mesh. So go to the graphics panel and then click on the mesh group ID field, and then just give it a name, like W1 for instance. It doesn't really matter, you can name it anything, but name it W1 for water 1. And now this whole thing will be considered to be one mesh. So we can deselect it. As you can see, also the line colors have changed a bit to just show that it is actually one single mesh. If you want to select it again, we can also go to the select mesh input field in the tools panel, and then we enter W1, press enter, and it selects this mesh again. So next we want to make it look a bit more like water. So as you can see, this is a graphics object. It is already textured, but it has just a blank texture right now, and we want to select, for instance, the water texture, which would be this one. So we pick this asset, and as you can see, it changed to the water texture. Now it looks very messy. So we want to make this one seamless texture for the entire mesh. So what we do is we make sure that the entire mesh is selected, hold down the shift key, and then select any triangle, for instance this one, and then while holding down the shift key, we press the right mouse button and then drag the mouse down a little bit until we get the desired texture mesh and the desired texture size. So this is good. Okay, deselect the mesh. You can also check to see how it looks without all the connecting lines by going to view and toggle shapes. See, now it hides the shapes. The shapes are usually useful while editing, so let's just turn them back on again. So that's one step. Secondly, perhaps we want to make it the Z end index a little bit more to the front, just to make sure that most objects actually appear to be inside the water rather than in front of the water. So let's just set it to a higher value, like 700 for instance. You do that by going to the graphics panel and then making the Z index 700. Next up, we want to make sure that this is actually purely a graphics object. So we go to the physics panel and then we select the open category. This way it will be visible, but it will have no real physics interactions going on, because this is already handled by the layer we previously added, by the actual physics layer. So now we see here that it's actually not that nicely aligned. So we go to the tools, we select the vertex tool, and then we zoom in a little bit, pressing V, and then we go and select the vertex here, and then make it a little bit more aligned like this. Holding down the shift key allows you to select multiple vertices and move them all at once, and then holding shift and clicking next to it will deselect them. Okay, one more thing, you might want to add some transparency to the water to actually see what's happening inside the water. So select again the entire mesh, or go to the select mesh, enter the name, press enter, and select it that way. Go to the graphics panel and change the opacity to, for instance, 0.5, which will make it half transparent. And then finally, what we want to do is add some wavy animation to it. And in order to do that, we select any one of these triangles in the mesh. Doesn't matter which one. Usually you want to select one that is easy to find, for instance here on the right edge, and then you go to the attributes panel, and then you add a transform attribute. So now we have one transform attribute that applies to the entire mesh. So it's not necessary to apply this transform attribute to all these individual triangles that are part of the mesh. That would cause issues. You only need to add it to one triangle that is part of this mesh. So here we have our transform attribute, and you can change, for instance, the amplitude to make the waves appear a bit more high or small, or yeah, big or small, I guess. You can change the frequency to make the waves move a little bit faster. So let's change it a little bit up. And the length is also one of those parameters that kind of changes the appearance of the waves. And then there's the origin, which is, it's not really important right now, but it can be useful to create things like flags where there should be very little waving effect at the base of the flag, but a lot more near the edge. That will be explained in another video. So now we have our transform added, and well, perhaps we want to also create a little bit coloring effect. So let's go to the color tool and then click near one of the vertices. As you can see, because we clicked here, this one is now selected, so you can verify that by moving around in the color picker. And now there's a little trick. There's the multiplier, and we can set it to a value higher than 1, which will create a bit more of a glittery effect, which might look more nice at the surface of the water. So let's do that, and then let's go to the deeper waters where we might want to set it back to normal, but then create a bit more murky, dark appearance. And you can actually also do this for the opacity. So you can actually lower the opacity for certain places in the water and increase it in others. But I think it's fine for now. So let's leave it at that. And let's go and see how it looks. So there's our newly animated water. As you can see, it's just a floating body of water now. There's no other map elements, but at least now it appears to be behaving like you would expect water to behave. And you can obviously tweak all these parameters, make the water green, or make it look make it very thick by changing the attribute values. You can just play around and see what you want for your particular map. So I hope that explains the basics of how to add water or other liquids to the map. And see you in the next video.